Admiral, thank you so much. I think Greece is changing in a very pro-business way. I've spent 15 years of my life in London, where sort of being on time is of essence. Here in Greece, things... Admiral, thank you so much. I think Greece is changing in a very pro-business way. I've spent 15 years of my life in London, where sort of being on time is of essence. Here in Greece, things in the old days would start an hour late and everybody would find that normal. And the Admiral started by apologizing for being 6 minutes late. It's a signal that the country is heading in a good direction. So we're getting more organized, more competitive, more productive. I've been asked to say a few words about migration. And obviously migration is a challenge that affects the entire world. I just came back from the US, in New York. A key topic of discussion now is the migration pressure that the US is receiving. I was in London a couple of weeks ago, key political issue in the UK, the flows arriving into the United Kingdom. In the European political agenda, the topic has jumped at the top of interest in a number of European countries, and it's actually starting to have an impact in domestic politics, affecting people's choices in the elections. So it is a critical issue that we need to discuss and find ways to address. Displaced people from a number of causes, including war, famine, climate crisis, is on the rise. UNHCR expects hundreds of millions of people may need to be relocated in the years to come. Obviously, the Western world, if I can use this word generically, needs to do more to resolve global inequalities, as well as events like the lack of democracy and respect for human rights in many parts of the world. But this does not mean that the solution to such a crisis can be irregular migration. And it is my job in the Ministry of Migration to ensure that we reduce the number of irregular arrivals to Greece and the European Union. We need to avoid what I call the abuse of the asylum system. The Geneva Convention was written for a good reason, to protect those people in need, moving directly from a point of risk to a point of safety. But the Geneva Convention is not an encompassing tool to resolve all global inequalities. And we see today smugglers taking advantage of people for enormous profit. People smuggling now is the biggest smuggling business in the world, much larger than smuggling of drugs or other illegal substitutes. They're making fortunes by transferring migrants, undertaking extreme risk, as we see sea fatalities, especially in the central Mediterranean route nowadays. They transfer migrants between countries which are safe countries, like signatories of the Geneva Convention, countries which are members of the Council of Europe. As I stated recently in Geneva at the 73rd session of the Executive Committee of the United Nations High Committee for Refugees, it is critical to preserve the integrity of the asylum system, providing asylum to those in need, but actively discouraging asylum shopping. We need to provide shelter to those entitled to it, but we can't allow smugglers to come and select who comes and lives in Europe. We need to work in a more coordinated way. I think Europe has sent a very strong signal when in March 2022, we decided to open our borders for people coming from Ukraine. Given the fact that this is a war at the borders of Europe, it was critical, and that's exactly the spirit of Geneva, to open our borders, and now millions of people have come temporarily to the European Union, and Greece has already provided shelter for 75,000 people in the last few months. As it is today, many would argue that the European asylum model is broken. As arrivals, most of the arrivals do not originate directly from countries at risk. And it is, as I said, the smuggling networks that come to decide who comes to live in Europe. On the other hand, Europe does have the need for workforce. We do have the need for people to come and live in Europe, but we should do that in a legal way. And I think we're not doing enough to provide legal pathways to the European Union. And Greece is among the countries that has established a number of platforms to allow people to come and work in Greece, or come as investors, or come and study, or come for other legitimate reasons. What is happening today, it's causing first reception countries like Greece, like Italy, like Spain, like Malta, like Cyprus, which together will have formed a group within the European Union called the Med5, which are facing uneven, unfair pressure. And I have to remind you that in 2022 is a year of extreme arrivals for Europe. Greece is seeing an increase of 80% compared to 2021, but we're still at a second lowest level of arrivals in the last 10 years. We've seen an enormous crisis in 2015, 2016, where over 1 million people came through Greece to the European Union, an event that led the European Union to agree with Turkey, the 2016 joint statement, where Turkey undertook the responsibility to protect its own external borders, something that it does with varying success, and at the same time accept the return of those not entitled to international protection to return back to Turkey, which is something that unfortunately is not happening to the extent we expected. So this year we expect around 14,000 people to come to Greece. This is on top of the arrival we've seen the year before, but at the same time we have seen arrivals in the European Union in total to be at record levels since 2016. And that caused a lot of considerable political debate in the European Union as we're trying to agree on a new pact on migration and asylum, the 27 EU member states. A new pact that, according to Greece, needs to find a balance between the responsibility of frontline member states and the solidarity that other member states need to be able to provide. But more importantly, with the new pact on migration and asylum, we need to find ways to reduce the overall arrivals in the European Union by focusing, for example, on the external dimension, working closely with countries of origin and countries of transit to reduce irregular migration to the European Union. When it comes to Greece, we have done a lot over the years. We have seen an enormous pressure in 2015 to 2019 that led to many overcrowded camps around the country. We have been able now to reduce the number of asylum seekers residing in camps from 92,000 people at the end of 2019 to 18,000 people today, to 34 camps today from 121 camps we had a few years ago. And also we are able to provide now camps that meet very strict European Union Asylum Agency standards. So now we provide for 34 camps that meet this appropriate level of standards, both for the benefit of asylum seekers, but also the safety, the security that is needed for the protection of asylum seekers, our staff, and local communities. Thanks to technology and the hard work of our team, we are able to reduce our asylum backlog. Now Greece has the most productive asylum service in Europe. We went down from 202,000 pending applications 3 years ago to 25,000 today. We should be at zero by early 2023, end of first quarter, as we're also digitizing now completely our asylum process. From arrival to application, to card registration, to final delivery of decision, everything will be paperless. And that's a system that many EU member states are now looking at, a program that we have developed in-house with the help, of course, of specialized companies at the Ministry of Migration. We have done a lot to protect unaccompanied minors. We had over 5,000 unaccompanied minors in Greece 3 years ago. We worked with 13 European member states to relocate around 1,500. Some kids grow older and now they are in semi-independent living facilities. The remaining children now in Greece, they are no longer kept in police custody like we did for 20 years, are no longer kept in camps in the islands, but all in specialized centers. So we are doing our part to provide an effective, efficient asylum system, in line with the obligation that Greece has under the Geneva Convention and international law. At the same time, we do not want to be the gateway to Europe for illegal smugglers. And that's why we are investing in protecting our external borders by using technology, by using the personnel and staff of the Hellenic Navy, the Hellenic Coast Guard, the police, in order to prevent smuggling networks from taking advantage of the European Union. As I said at the very beginning, it's a very complicated issue. It is a very sensitive issue. It affects people, so we need to be very cautious as we formulate policy. We need to be able to provide for the shelter that the international law expects us to do, but at the same time, migration needs to be functioning more in a legal and organized way. This was my initial thoughts, Admiral and members of the panel. I'll be happy to answer questions at the end. Thank you so much.